Game on. Welcome to another edition of Ref the District, the official podcast of DC Sports. This is season 1, episode number 3. And as you can see, my partner is not here, Nathan. Of course, I'm the stoner. And actually, Nathan would be over here. He's not here because he had a little medical procedure this week, but he is A-OK. He'll be back for episode 4 and beyond next week, so don't worry about that. So there's plenty to talk about, obviously, as usual, with the Washington football team, with Taylor Heinicke signing a new contract. The Caps have been off for a week, even though they weren't supposed to be, so there's nothing to talk about there. But the Wiz, they lost earlier again. They still suck, of course. And the Nats season is about to get underway, at least spring training. But you're not going to listen to me talk about it for an hour. We do have a special guest coming in, and I'm going to introduce him now. His name is Matt. Matt, welcome to the show. Welcome to Ref the District.
Yeah, thank you. Very warm welcome. Appreciate it, Stoner. And I just off the bat would like to say that I hope Nathan recovers from his upper body injury. I didn't even realize
injury.
I didn't even realize I was on the taxi squad until I got a call. So here I am answering the call. Happy to be here. I hope I can only hope to fill a toe in Nathan's shoes. You guys are doing a great job.
Thank you. And what have you heard? What has been the buzz about Ref the District in your part of the world?
Well, I don't know. I do have a question. I do have a question for you. However, there is something that you guys say that you're the official podcast, and I'm wondering how does one become the official podcast for DC Sports?
Very simple. You just say it, and it is.
Okay.
And it becomes reality.
Okay.
So
that's good.
So
what have I heard of my
Washington Sports? There is no. That's not like a thing. You know what I mean? So it's not like the Nationals or the Capitals, which are an organization. Washington Sports is very nebulous, so we can call ourselves the official podcast of it.
Okay, that's good. I mean, that is a nice broad subject area. I'm wondering when like the Castles come back and start playing, how much time you'd be spending on team tennis.
I don't think the Castles are going to get any run.
Okay.
Just so you know.
Well, let me cross this off the list then.
No Castles talk.
All right. Well, that's a shame. But like I said, so happy to be here. I am very opinionated on sports. I'm from the DC area. I'm old enough where I can say I'm from the DC area and not I'm from the DMV.
Right. And that's kind of what I was going to ask you about to set this up is that we have a perspective. Nathan and I, we're transplants. Like a lot of people in this area are transplants to the DC area. And we're kind of Johnny-come-lately fans. For me, It's been only about 20 years. I first came to the area in 99 and have been a fan ever since. So I don't know anything except losing other than the last couple of years with the Nats and the Caps. But especially with the Washington football team, I know nothing but losing. One playoff win. But you, on the other hand, you're born and raised in Washington, D.C. You left for a little bit for work, but now you're back into the area. So your perspective is completely different than ours. And you grew up with RFK, the rockin' RFK, and the Hogs and the Fun Bunch and Riggo and all of that stuff.
I did.
So what was that like, and how is that perspective different than a lot of us?
Well, gather around, children, and let me tell you a story. No, it's a good point because I think there are different perspectives, and I think it really does depend on not only sort of how you became a fan of the Washington football team or Washington sports in general, but kind of when you became a fan too. I grew up in a time when the Washington football team, they were winning. and there was no. I mean, the NFC East was just dominant, um, minus minus the Eagles. Um, I mean, for a good period of time there, RFK was legendary.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and the at the time Redskins, really brought the town together. I mean, winning will do that. Um, but it's a weird experience because I went to. You said I grew up in I was born and grew up in Washington D.C. That's not true. I've lived in Washington D.C. I've lived in Maryland. Well, I mean it's a thing here, right?
Yeah.
I've
Yeah.
I've lived in Maryland. I've lived in Northern Virginia. I check and check. Um, so I've got the experience there. But growing up for a time, I was going to summer camp in Arlington County as a child.
Mm-hmm.
Just this is a couple of, and one of the camp counselors there was Virgil Say, who was the wide receiver for for the Washington football team in the early 80s, and the nicest guy in the
Yeah.
world, and didn't lord it over anybody. And if you wanted to talk to him about it, you could pull him aside and ask him some questions. I don't know if that. I mean, obviously, that's not going to happen today. So is it because I grew up, watching Washington sports? Uh, Another thing I'd bring up too is, I didn't have a home team baseball team to
Sure.
root for growing up. They had left in the early '70s for the hopefully last time to become the Rangers. So all we had was Orioles, right? I was not an Orioles fan. I was not brought up. I was told, not explicitly, but at no point did I get the impression that I was ever supposed to be an Orioles fan. I
That's
actually grew up.
that's good parenting right there.
Well, I mean, I
Yeah.
grew up. Save it. I grew up rooting for the
Oh,
Yankees.
jeez.
But the deal always was once we got our team, it was over. And the day they announced, the day baseball announced that the Expos were moving to DC, it was
Yeah.
over with me and the Yankees. But uh, we didn't have the baseball thing. We'd go to Memorial Stadium, and we'd go to Camden Yards when that opened to catch ball games. The Capitals thing is relatively new. They were always there at the Cap Center and,
In
and later
Landover.
US Air
Yeah.
Arena. Um, but they kind of made waves. What was it, 99, 98 when they made the Stanley Cup
Yep.
Finals? This
98.
shows you, yeah, 98. Adam Oates, I believe, was on that team, right?
Now I think that
I could
was
be wrong.
pre Oates. The
That was
the big
pre-Oates.
guy on that team was like Sergei Gonchar. I think he was kind of the
Okay.
star, if you will.
My point with this is, like, I didn't grow up a Caps
Right.
fan, and I grew up. It's interesting. This is all this talk about or dancing around, figuring or getting used to saying the Washington football team and not saying the old name. It's making me now realize that this is the second time that we've had a professional team change their name.
Sure.
Um, I of course remember when that happened. I didn't really grow up being too much of a Bullets and Wizards fan. Um,
Well, basketball's
uh,
not really your thing. You're a football, soccer, baseball guy.
yeah, I'd say so. I mean, of course, I followed with interest coming from a University of Maryland family when the Terps obviously won the championship. That was big news. There's not much, unfortunately, to talk about.
Nowadays. Yeah.
Um, this season, I mean, I think they've held their own in years in the Big Ten after that move.
Sure. Last year, for example, they were an excellent team. They tied for the regular season title, I believe, before COVID shut everything down.
Yeah, I think they. What do they do? They keep running into Wisconsin, kind of, right? I mean, they've been on, they've been the big dogs on that
And
side
Michigan
for a
State.
while.
Don't forget Michigan State.
Well, I mean, yeah,
Yeah. So
I'm not there for
yeah.
Michigan State.
So we've had a lot of legendary at least in our own minds, legendary debates about Washington football and all the
Okay.
sports.
Yeah.
And I know there have been times, many times, where you've just said, "That's it. I'm done. I'm done with this team, and it's
Yes.
mostly off the field stuff,
Yes.
right? But
This is true.
let's talk a little bit of on the field stuff.
I will attempt to hold my own in a conversation
We're not
about
going to get deep. We're not going to get too
contemporary on the field. Right.
But I'm curious I'm curious to your thoughts about the new regime with Ron Rivera and this whole coach-centric approach to where he's the coach. You hire 2 general managers who report to the coach. And his whole idea that he's going to change the culture of the overall team. And I know culture is a big deal to you. You hold teams accountable for their culture of their team, especially the Washington football team.
Yeah, but I do hold the Washington football team accountable for the behavior, and you're right. A lot of it is off the field. Going back to talking about growing up with this football team, when the owner was Jack Kent Cooke, it was just a different organization, and I don't know why anybody would expect 2 different owners to have a similar culture. I think that's natural. Sure. But I think over the years, what we've seen coming out of the Daniel Snyder-owned Washington football team, I think there's certainly been some cause for concern for the direction that the organization's going in, for what they stand for. And when I say that, I also I look at other organizations like the Steelers or the Patriots, and they've had their issues, but I think it's a lot more forgivable, at least for their fan base, if not for fans who aren't fans of the Steelers and the Patriots. I think it's a lot more forgivable when the teams are successful, right? You've said it before. I've heard you say it plenty of times that winning solves a lot, or winning covers up a lot.
Winning cures everything.
Winning cures everything, sure. So I don't think some of the problems the Redskins have I don't think some of the problems the Washington football team has had over the years are necessarily solvable by winning. I'd like the opportunity sort of to find out, but nice. one of the elements of that equation is you have to win. Yeah. And I think the fan base, because everybody I know, my neighbors, my friends, my relatives, almost to a person, are fans of the Washington football team. I think they're desperate to latch on to any sort of hope, right? And we've seen this with Rivera, and I've been hearing it a lot. And I started watching in earnest maybe around halfway through the season, when they were really starting to turn things around.
Because you had refused to watch them at the first part of the season.
Yeah, I mean, look, this might be a turnoff to a lot of people, but I think my reasons are, valid. Yes, I had refused for a couple different reasons. There was the way they handled the year of the broken leg, and they refused, or at least as far as we know, nobody gave Kaepernick a phone call. I think he was the best option. I think that was a no-brainer. Nobody gave him a phone call, as far as we know. Mm-hmm. And I suspect the reason is there was an element of blackballing happening, right? He did something that went against a cardinal rule in America, and that is don't mess with the money. This is from the NFL ownership perspective. This is my perception. Mm-hmm. That was a tough thing for me to deal with. Oh yeah, and by the way, they had signed that linebacker in the same time frame, who was just released from his third assault felony,
Reuben
right?
Foster.
Thank you, Reuben Foster. Now, that doesn't mean Reuben Foster did those things. He was arrested. He was let go. The Redskins are right. The Washington football team is right there, giving him a call. Hey, come join us. Yeah. So I don't think. What was the name of the quarterback they picked up that ended up being the starter for the last or part of the season? He hadn't taken a professional snap since like 2012, I think.
Yeah, first it was, excuse me, it was Mark Sanchez, and then it was.
Nope, not Fumble.
Yeah, after him, Johnson is what comes to mind. I can't remember. It was so.
You're right. You're
James
right. That
Johnson.
it was Johnson.
Yeah, something like
It was
that.
JJ. I remember the initials.
Yeah, and he
like
was
Jeff
he was
Johnson.
very forgettable.
Johnson.
That's why I can't remember. He was very forgettable
right.
on the field.
So I don't believe that the Redskins made. I don't believe that the Washington football team made the best move at the time. So I don't. If you're not going to be able to set yourself up so you can say, "Hey, we were trying to win,"
mm-hmm.
then the other issues you have, the behind the scenes issues, the front office issues, I think they get bigger.
Okay.
Then these reports come out about the way women have been treated in the organization, and there were rumors, there was it was talked around, but there was never any direct evidence, I don't think, until this year, right? Yeah, I had taken the stance that I was not interested in the team this season, and I went back on that.
Okay, so and what was your reason for going back on that?
To be completely honest,
boredom.
One of my very good friends. No. Am I in my 40s and do I have somebody I call a best friend? Yes. He moved very close by, within walking distance of where I'm at now, and how do I not fall back into watching football on Sunday with a guy that I grew up watching football on Sunday with, and it just we just fell into that old routine, and then they started looking like they were going to win the division. I wasn't going to, you can't say they were winning, because they weren't.
They were getting by.
But yeah, they were winning the division. And man, did it become an exciting season. Now, Rivera, for me, the jury is definitely still out on whether or not this is going to be a successful relationship. I think there were things that I saw that concerned me. This is a guy who, in close games, in games that were must-win games, would go into the locker room at the end of the half and at the end of the game with timeouts in his pocket. Mm-hmm. Now, that might sound like a small thing to harp on, but we're talking about, one-score leads or one-score deficits. Yeah. And I just didn't see a lot of clock management happening very well. I think we saw some of that in the Tampa Bay playoff game. I think he did a really good job of getting around the Snyder influence, if this is indeed what was going on with Haskins. And I don't think past head coaches we've had would survive a toe-to-toe with Snyder on benching a Snyder guy, mm-hmm. which I think we've heard Haskins, or at least that's what Gruden has said. Haskins is a Snyder guy, or was a Snyder guy. We'll see about Rivera. I mean, it's been an interesting year. It's been sort of the year of the moral victory. And I know people say that, there's no such thing, but come on, the head coach diagnosed with cancer, going through chemo, getting treatment during the season. Correct me if I'm wrong, maybe I'm making this up, but I think maybe even getting treatment, during game,
like at
wasn't
halftime.
At one point he was getting treatment during halftime.
Like he was getting IVs because of the treatment he was getting was draining him.
Sounds like treatment to me.
Absolutely.
And then the Alex Smith story, that redemption story. Mm-hmm. It would have been great. It would have been, man, what a difference it would have made if they would have been able to pull off the upset against Tampa Bay. I mean, it would have.
Do you put any stock into the saying that you lost to the eventual champion, so therefore, or you gave the eventual champion a better game than anybody else did the rest of the playoffs? Does that bear any weight on how good this team actually is?
I think if you're a fan of the losing team in that scenario, yes, I think so. Yeah. Right? Yeah. Because that's exactly what happened. We gave them the biggest fight that they faced in the playoffs. Certainly a bigger fight than the AFC champions gave them.
Right. That That was boring.
Who could have seen that one coming?
Not me.
Right. I think you made a prediction last
Yeah,
week
I
about that.
did. I was way off, which is not uncommon. I'm way off quite
You weren't
often.
alone.
Yeah.
You weren't alone. I was given the opportunity. I was given the opportunity to make a bet on Tampa Bay right before kickoff because I didn't want to lose, $20 because
Right, right.
there was no way that was happening.
That's why I don't bet, because I'm more often I'm wrong, but I'm still gonna put those projections out there. I'm just not gonna put any money on it and lose my money.
Yeah. Um, Getting back to your question about can you take any comfort in losing to the eventual champions? As the fan of the losing team, yes, I think you do. What else is there? But I don't think it matters to anybody else. I don't think.
Right.
I don't
Nobody
think.
else is thinking about that, looking back and
No.
saying, "Ooh, that Washington really gave them a fight.
Yeah.
They're going to be good." Yeah, I agree. But
Maybe
what we
scouts
saw
next year.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah. But what we saw was a quarterback come in week or game 17 who played better than any of our quarterbacks in any of the previous 16 games. And he was a guy they just picked up off the street, and now they've signed him to a 2-year deal.
Right.
Very, very low risk for the team, low money, lots of incentives if he's going to play. Well, actually, a lot of them are just be on the roster and you're going to get, a lot of money,
Right.
which is great, I think. But do you think he's the guy going forward, or do you think he's just like an insurance policy?
So you and Nathan talked about this, and I think I kind of disagree. I can't remember where you guys stood, but I don't think you were very far apart from each other. And I don't think I agreed with your guys' estimation of this or take on this. How many football teams after game 16 or 16 plus take time in the off season worrying about who their quarterback's going to be that isn't the one who took the last snap for them the season before?
How many typically, or how many just in this last year?
Generally,
Probably half.
all right, so half. How many of them of the half that you're saying? How many of them can say the quarterback who took their last snap was the best quarterback? Not that they've seen that year, but they've seen in the last 2 seasons, 3 seasons. Since Cousins, we haven't seen a guy throw like Heinicke
Right.
threw. And I'm not saying that this isn't a fluke,
because it could be.
But
It could be
I
a
think
fluke, a total fluke.
sure, of course, and I think Warner was brought up. I think Nathan brought up Warner last time, saying like, look, he's not the next Kurt Warner. I don't think he said I don't think he is. But we talked about this, you and I, over the phone during this late season run and playoff run, and I asked you to name me the last time a Washington quarterback has shown the poise in the pocket, has shown the mobility, has shown the accuracy that we saw from Heinicke in the game and change that we saw from Heinicke.
Right. And I think the best I could come up with, because you can't say Cousins because Cousins didn't have the mobility. But
Okay.
I would probably have to go all the way back to Brunell, and that wasn't even for very long. That was only a couple years worth.
Yeah.
So, and maybe not in our lifetime. I don't remember.
Yeah.
Like I said, I was not a fan of the team during the glory years, so I don't know if Theismann was a scrambler type quarterback.
Well, you know enough to know that we didn't have Theismann won one Super Bowl with him, right? And I believe lost one. But also Doug Williams, Mark Rippon. This has never been a really quarterback-centric team. At least I never felt it was. Jay Schrader. who else could be named from those days?
From those days, I don't know.
And then at the end, yeah, then they blew that pick on. Well, let me say, Heath Schuler didn't work out. I think Jason Campbell had had the ability to be that guy, but then the complete lack of an offensive line ruined him. I mean, I think he got sacked like 8 times, 9 times in a game. So you'll give a quarterback happy feet if he can't trust that he's going to be kept protected. So if the answer is Heinicke is the best we've seen in whether it's Brunell, whether we're going back, right?
Okay, yes.
Why are we so quick to replace?
Well, because it's one game, and if we're gonna say somebody who's done it for a short amount of time, then you can easily go to RG3, who did it for an entire season, but never did it again. True. But he did it for an entire season. We're trying to find the guy who's going to do it for 3 to 5 years and be consistent with it. We have no idea. Heinicke's played in, I don't know, 3 games, and he's gotten hurt every time. He started 2 games, and he's been he was incredibly impressive. I didn't think he would do anything close to that. In fact, before the game, I even said I'd rather push Alex Smith out in a wheelchair and have him start over Taylor Heinicke. I was obviously wrong. Shocker. Yeah. I'm wrong all the time.
Yeah.
But he did it for 1 game. I don't know that he can do it. And I don't want to go into another training camp with I don't know if this is our guy. Or I don't know. We're going to have a quarterback competition going into camp. I'm tired of quarterback competitions. Or a guy who is the starter that we don't know if he can play, like the Haskins, like RG3, his second year. And I'm tired of that. I want a guy.
Well, the problem with the RG3 situation is they took the option. They took the option out of the playbook. They just ripped it right out of the playbook. And I think they had built the playbook around a quarterback who was an option running quarterback.
Right.
I don't think. No offense to RG3 at all. I don't mean to, but insult him in any way. But I don't think he was tall enough to be a pocket passer ever.
Or they have the ability to read a defense and react properly.
Yeah, maybe. I mean, I can't talk to that because I don't think he ever really got the opportunity to develop that before coming to the NFL.
Absolutely.
Because that's not what he was doing in college.
They said they had like 5 plays in college. And he just went out there and first read, if that guy's open, sling it. If not, run. And that's all they did. So, yeah.
But this idea, though, I think now that we've seen how the story of the NFL season has played out and how the Super Bowl played out, and going back to your question of can you take comfort in your team losing to the eventual champions, I think now we have the closest thing to figuring out where Heinicke stands in relation to other teams. And that is, yes, we only saw him for a game. It wasn't a low pressure game. It wasn't an audition. You were playing this game. And who were they playing? They were playing Tampa Bay. What did Tampa Bay do to MVP Patrick Mahomes?
And MVP
actually, reverse it.
Rodgers. And then
what
Mahomes.
Yeah. So yeah, it was only a game, but I think there's a good litmus test there for lack of more playing time. It's honestly, I think the old way of thinking or the standard way of thinking that you've got to go for the tried and true, comfortable, the league's comfortable with knowing who this person is. I think you got to give a little bit of wriggle room to the Washington football team if they say, no, Heinicke's our guy.
Okay.
Because I don't see any reason why he's not at this point. Now, you could say there's a lot of unanswered questions, sure, but there's no answer yet that says he's not the guy.
Okay. Well, I will say this about Heinicke and the quarterback situation. The most important part is the coach, the general managers,
Yeah.
your scouts, whomever, that they're all on the same page, and that they all say, okay, this is our guy, and this is who we're going with, or our stable of guys, 1, 2, or
Yeah.
3 guys,
Yeah, I agree.
and that they're all on the same page, and that outside influences don't come in, or the coach wants one guy and the general manager wants somebody else. I just want to feel that stability of everybody's on the same page. This is the direction we're all going. We're all going together. It might not work, but at least we're all going to do it one way without all kinds of different outside influences. And we know what those outside influences are.
Well, I was going to say, I've got bad news for you then. You're backing the wrong football team for avoiding those outside influences. And I know you were talking about it in previous episodes, and it's something I hear a lot. No, but he's changed. No, but this means he's changed.
And he has not proven
Sorry.
that he's changed. And
No.
we thought maybe he would change when he brought in Shanahan to be the guy, an experienced Super Bowl winning coach. Schottenheimer for a year.
And who I think he either ended up with an 8-8 or 9-7 record, which was the exact same record Gibbs got his first year. And what was the problem? Why did Schottenheimer get fired, let go, mutually, agreed upon? It was a culture issue with the owner.
That's absolutely why he was let go.
Yeah. So, and I think it was. I could be wrong on this. I'm getting older. My memory gets more and more foggy every day. I think it was because Schottenheimer was bringing too many family members into the fold, or there was something to do with a brother or a son. If I'm not, listeners, correct me. Feel free to flame me on being way off base. But I just think it's interesting that when Shanahan brings in Kyle, I think at that point people were saying, this means he's changed.
Right.
Fired Schottenheimer over this issue. He's okay with it now. Salad days ahead of us.
Right. But they draft RG3 with the second pick, in which, again, I was fully behind giving up all those picks to go get him. But then they draft Kirk Cousins in the 3rd or 4th round because Shanahan knew RG3 was not the guy.
Not in the NFL.
Right. And again, that was the outside influence for Shanahan. And Jay Gruden and Bruce Allen, that combination. Or they brought in Scott McCloughan for a year to be the general manager. And it's just been so wild and different directions from different parts of the team. I just want one direction. And if they say that it's Taylor Heinicke and Kyle Allen and Tyrod Taylor or whomever, if they say this is the way to go because we're not going to spend a draft pick on a quarterback because there's nobody at 19 or whatever that we really like, that's fine. I just want that direction to say we're going forward and we're either going to win or we're going to, fall on our face trying.
Okay, I've got a couple questions for you then. Is there a decision they can make that would stop you from being a fan?
On the field or off the field or either?
I mean, or what's your threshold? Like, what would it take? Would it have to be something like you're asking for something, which is you would want the front office to let you, Stoner, know what the way forward is. If they don't, would that affect your fanhood at all?
I don't think so, because it's certainly been tested in the last 20 years. Tested to the limit. I've said it many times. I live 10 miles from whatever Ravens Stadium is called now. I'm up here in Baltimore, near Baltimore, and everybody around is Ravens fans. I've had plenty of chances to switch. In the lowest of the lows, in the 3-13s and everything, and I haven't done it yet. So maybe if they
So
don't go in that direction, it's not going to cost my fandom, but I'm just going to be even more pissed than I usually am, I guess.
okay, no, I understand that. I'm just trying to I'm just trying to gauge, is this a demand? Like, is this an expectation? Because I think we all have been at the mercy of whatever, whomever is the coach, whomever is the general manager. We've been at the mercy of their decisions, regardless of how we feel about it. And I do think that Heinicke is the way forward. I also think that if Heinicke were to take snap one, game one, there's a chance that it won't be made official until the Wednesday before snap one game.
Yeah, way down
There's
the line.
There's a chance they break camp without making it official. We can infer, we can assume, but I think there's a chance of that. And I don't think whether or not they tell us or how much they inform us or how open they are about it, I don't think that matters for the product on the field. And it's a wait and see proposition. Sure. I mean, what else do we have to talk about, right, in the off season other than what should they do? This is the old having a beer conversation.
Yeah, absolutely. It's what we do. That's why the NFL is king, because we talk about it year round. They only play 4 or 5 months out of the year, but we talk about it year round.
We've spent the last 40 minutes talking about the sport that's out of season.
Right.
And we're not going to see again till July, August?
And that's just camp and ugly preseason games. September is when you see the real thing. But here's one problem I have with signing Heinicke, and I'm all for signing him.
Oh, it cost nothing.
It didn't cost anything, hardly, right?
Right.
But here's the problem: everyone's like, you got to have Heinicke there as your insurance policy, as your backup, and then maybe bring in somebody, whether it's through trade, draft, free agent, whatever.
Yeah.
But the minute he's not the starter, and whoever is the starter struggles, it's all going to be about put in Heinicke, rather than him being the insurance policy. So I'm concerned about that.
When have you not? Tell me the last time we haven't talked about, as fans, I don't know, I'm kind of sexy for X.
Yeah.
Or bringing Colt.
Oh yeah, it was always about Colt.
Or Cousins should be starting instead of RG3. Right. This is the story. We had Jurgensen. Now, I'm not old enough for these days, but we had Jurgensen and Kilmer. This is kind of the legacy, and this goes back to my thing about the Washington football team not having that. You'd have to go back. I'd argue you'd have to go back to slinging Sammy Baugh before you start talking about an all-time franchise quarterback
for this franchise. Yeah.
We don't have a Favre. We don't have a Bradshaw. We don't, and that's fine. We've had success without that proposition. So why do we expect it now? We know what this team needs. This team needs, whether we have it now or not, an offensive line, a dual back threat, a secondary that's not a sieve, and I think we're going to be okay. It's the NFC East. We historically, might not be as true this year or in recent years as it's been in the past, but we just play football differently. We're not the NFC West. We don't have gunslingers.
Yeah.
So Heinicke did the job for what he was asked to do.
Yes.
So let's do it.
And that may be ultimately what they decide to do. They might go with a Heinicke, Alex Smith, Kyle Allen threesome this year. They might. And we're just going to have to deal with it. But all I can really hope for is that word is hope. If you have hope, right, then you look forward to the season. But if you don't have hope, then why bother?
Is it the best way forward? Are there better options out there? Could be. Could be, sure. But sticking with Heinicke, my one and only argument, if anybody's listening can take away, is sticking with Heinicke is in no way a capitulation, because he, I think, for what he's been asked to do, has done great. He's done great. Now, will it last?
Time will tell. Absolutely. Well, I'm going to pivot from the Washington football team, and I appreciate your views on Heinicke and the football team. Now, we're going to talk about this just briefly because I know you don't follow basketball as much, but I'm a big Wizards guy, and what I don't understand is why they continue with Scotty Brooks as their coach as bad as they are. And I don't want to hear what I hear a lot is, well, it's a lost year. He's in the last year of his contract. He's not coming back anyway, so just let him ride it out. I don't want to hear that.
Yeah.
Because coaching can make a difference in the NBA. We've seen it from last year to this year with the Knicks. Because I was watching the Wiz and the Knicks the other night, and they flashed up this stat about the Knicks defense last year compared to this year when they have a new coach. And it's a completely different defensive team, and the players aren't that different. So I think they need to let Scotty go. I've been saying it really for 3 years. It's on record, because they're wasting Bradley Beal's prime. He's in his absolute prime, and they're just wasting this year. I don't want to hear just ride it out for another year. Do you follow the Wizards enough to see what Beal is doing and how bad the Wizards are?
I know that Beal is the one and only player that the rest of the NBA is watching, and I think there is some concern about the way he is not being able to succeed with the Wizards. Right? I think people want to see an unleashed Beal. Now, we're seeing an unleashed Beal play on the court for DC, but we don't see what he can do with a supporting cast, right? A setup for success. And you're talking about Brooks and the coach, and I think you're right. I think that the coach can make a difference, and I think there are plenty of examples when the coach absolutely makes a difference. But the NBA is a funny thing. What do they got? 12 people on the roster, 9 people on the roster
for the team, the players. Well, 15 at least.
Is it 15?
Yeah. Well, I think it's a little bit more this year because of the COVID.
Because of COVID,
but it's usually 12 to 15.
But you got who you got. And I think we've seen plenty of teams also succeed because of the team that's on the court and despite their coach. We saw it with the Heat when they brought in LeBron James and Wade. What's that guy? See, this is how bad of a fan I am. I can picture the guy. I can picture him in my head. What's his name? The coach of the Heat.
Spoelstra. Eric Spoelstra.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you. Spoelstra, right? Spoelstra.
Spole. Yeah. Who knows?
Does anybody think that he was instrumental in what that team was able to do? I don't think it's a requirement.
At that time. You're right. At that time, and he didn't. Nobody really thought anything of him. It was LeBron, D. Wade, Chris Bosh, Ray Allen. It wasn't the coach. You got to have the horses for it, for sure.
So would is there a coach on the planet right now in your mind that would elevate the Wizards to a winning team, let alone a deep run playoff team?
Probably not. I mean, probably not is not the right word. No, there is not, because they don't have the horses. But again, hope. Give me some hope. Give me some night in and night out that there's a chance that they can win. I go into every game thinking they're not going to win, even against the worst teams. Against the Knicks last night. Sorry, the other night, whenever it was. It was garbage to watch them. Now, Beal didn't play. He was resting. Whatever. And they got blown out by the Knicks. The Knicks. Now the Knicks are better, but the Knicks still stink.
I mean, the Knicks are the Knicks.
Yeah, they're terrible.
That's a hapless organization. At least the little bit I paid attention to over the since I don't know Starks.
Yeah, you're going way back, but
Ewing?
yeah, Starks and Ewing,
Yeah.
Mark Jackson. Oh yeah, Anthony Mason.
Um,
Now you got me going.
yeah, Anthony Mason.
Oakley.
Right. So, um, it's interesting that you're talking about hope, and that's kind of been the theme for today. I think we're looking at organizations for which it can be said that you're not even in hope territory yet. You have to get to a certain baseline level before you activate hope. Like if you say all I'm looking for is hope, then it's hopeless, right? If hope's the only thing you're hanging on to, then pack it in. It's over with. There has to be a point where you actually believe in the hope in the moment and not saying, just give me some hope. And it sounds like that's where the Wizards are. I feel like the Wizards, there was hope, right? They were a playoff team in 3 out of 4 year period or 2 out of 3 year. They were in the playoffs. The other thing about the NBA is unless you were one of 6 teams that on the first game of the season, if you're not one of those 6 teams, it's hopeless for you. That's kind of where the NBA is.
It is right now. Sure, there are probably 6 teams that have maybe not even that many. There might be 3 or 4 teams that really have a shot.
I was being gracious. Right. I was being gracious. Right. And as we see, teams are willing to make teams. Forget teams. Players are willing to get together and make blockbuster deals to try to get that gelled team of nothing but all-stars so they can roughshod over everybody else. The NBA is interesting. I probably, if I had more time, I should follow it more. Because I have a very good friend of mine who over the years has pounded into me. He's tried to get me to understand this view. And I think I'm just about there saying, look, you follow college basketball to a point. The NBA is just a better product.
Better than college football. I mean, college basketball.
Absolutely. 100%. It's not even a question. I mean, the NBA, they're surgical. They score, I'm guessing there are many fewer turnovers. I can't remember even who it was. Maryland had scored, I think, 18 points in the first half this year. That. And I went online to find out. What's the fewest points Maryland scored in a half. And the only thing I found out online was in, I think, 2010, they'd scored 19 only against Miami in a half. And so, I went online to kind of, show, look at me, I know a fact, and I put online, and people were like, no. In December, they scored 17 against Rutgers. And, you're just not going to see that in it. 17 points in a half.
Yeah. Well, I think officiating is a lot different, obviously, but of course the talent.
Oh yeah, they let play go. And the foul, the disparity in number of fouls is an interesting X factor too, I think.
Well, getting back to the, I don't want to talk about the Wiz anymore because they just make me angry.
It's too depressing.
The theme here of hope, and the hope is the Nats spring training starts this week, I believe, or at least teams start reporting to camp. I believe they have all of their ducks in a row as far as when teams can report, what all their safety protocols are, their season, their schedule, all that good stuff. Seems to all be in place as far as I can tell.
Yeah.
And, of course, you and I are both huge Nats fans. We both went to the same World Series game last year.
Right.
You've had season tickets in the past.
I have.
And the Nats always, at least for the last 10 years, they've given us hope every year. They've been a good team, a team that's going to battle for a playoff or for the World Series. And now they've got this season coming up. What is your, have you been paying attention to maybe their off-season moves or the moves in the division, all that. What is your hope
Yeah.
level for the Nats?
So I haven't been paying attention this offseason as much as I have in the past. And I think it's because the way this last season broke down.
Yeah.
You're talking about hope. I mean, we were supposed to, on April X of 2020, we were supposed to be going to opening day, which is the opening day, the home opener, the first time that the Nats play at home, has become the closest thing I have to going to a religious service. I'm going to this. Like, there's nothing stopping me from this.
Mm-hmm.
And this was going to be the one that there was going to be some Nats employee who was going to raise that pennant, and we were all going to, hug and cry and drink and, whatever however you react to that, yell, laugh, boo, I don't know. And that was that wasn't that was taken from us. Events happened. And if that's the worst thing that happened, then I think it's you're doing okay. But the way the season went down, the way the Dodgers won it,
that doesn't help.
And I've had arguments with people who've tried to convince me that this World Series the Dodgers won is equal to any World Series that anybody else wins, and it's just not a viewpoint I can get along with.
So you want an asterisk for the Dodgers?
I think I don't even need an asterisk. It's there. I see it. I think it'd be like the difference between somebody who's colorblind and somebody who can see color. Like it doesn't matter. I don't need to tell you if that's green or not. You either know it's green or it's not green. There is an asterisk there. Whether it's printed in the baseball prospectus, whether the league officially puts it there, doesn't matter. They did not play 162 games and get beat to hell and then go through the playoffs to win that trophy. It's not worth the same. It's worth something. The Nats didn't win it, but it's not equal to, I still believe, and maybe because I'm a Nats fan, well, it's obviously because I'm a Nats fan, that they won the last full legitimate World Series.
So they're still
trophy.
Defending champions in your mind?
I think they're the defending champions of the 162 season World Series, or the 162 game season World Series.
Yeah.
So I haven't been paying as much attention. I didn't think they needed to do much before last season, and from what we saw last season, boy was I wrong.
Right.
I think they've made some interesting moves. This was an old team in the World Series. I think it was the oldest in the league.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think they've gotten much younger. They've picked up that utility infielder and that outfielder that they're both. I think they're both born in 84 or 85.
You're talking about Schwarber?
Nope.
No, not
Kyle.
Schwarber.
I'm not even talking about Kyle Schwarber.
Who was the first baseman that they picked up? You're right. I can't even remember off the top of my head.
And Lester.
Yeah, and Lester, right?
I mean, Lester, if he does nothing other than eat serviceable innings, then I think that's a decent move.
Sure.
But look, is Scherzer getting older? Yes. How that affects his effectiveness, we'll see. Strasburg, Corbin, we didn't see Corbin at all last year, right? Didn't he sit last season out?
No, he was there. You might have thought that way the way he pitched. He wasn't that good, but he pitched last year.
Who? It was Zimmerman, and there was somebody else.
Joe Ross.
It was Ross. Okay, so there was the pitcher. I'm sorry. Yeah. That was the other pitcher who. Well, Ross is back. Ross is our presumptive number 5 guy, right?
And Strasburg, you don't know about his health because he got shut down early last year. Something with his carpal tunnel, something or another. I think he had surgery on his wrist.
It was some kind of repetitive motion. Was it carpal tunnel?
Yeah, I think it was like a bad case that required surgery. So is he going to be healthy?
I mean, I'm going to knock on wood here. I mean, I can't think of a more fraught with peril operation than Tommy John for these guys. And,
Yeah.
you know, we're okay there.
But I think their bullpen, from what everybody says, how do I know these guys? But their bullpen seems to be really beefed up.
I don't know about Hand. Is he that much of an improvement?
Last year he was lights out. I do know that. And so especially against lefties, obviously he's a lefty, right? I mean, correct, I believe. But they beefed up their bullpen with some other guys. So usually that's a trademark of the Nats and Mike Rizzo is they kind of get by for a while until
Cardiac kids.
Late in the season. Then he'll start picking up some bullpen help, and that seems to have worked in the past. Maybe they've got that figured out, but we have to worry about the offense with, like you said, a lot of older guys and some unproven guys like Keyboom and the guy who plays second, again, names. When it's off-season in baseball is so much different than off-season in football. Off-season in baseball, you just kind of barely pay attention. But in football, your every move is scrutinized. But the guy who got shut down, he broke his wrist, I believe, last year at second base. Is he going to be okay? And so there's a lot of question marks with the age, with the health, with the guys they brought in. Can they replace the Adam Eatons and the guys who have been there for so long? I don't know. I'm concerned, but I have hope, of course. Absolutely.
I was going to mention, continuing the hope theme, another thing about hope is be careful about hope. I was at the elimination game against the Cardinals when hope was definitely in the air.
What was that, a 6-1 lead or something that they blew?
I don't remember. I just remember I was in section 104 up toward the concourse. I was farther back than I normally would be in section 104. And saying to the person I was at the game with, as this started happening, as it started unraveling, this isn't going to end well. And I'm telling you, at some point, you could hear a cough all the way across the stadium in the crowd on the first base line. I think it was 6-1. And 6-1 in the seventh?
Yeah, it was something like that, yeah.
Some things you're happy you forget.
Yeah, right.
Some things you wish you hadn't forgotten. And then I was overseas when they faced the Giants.
Okay, another heartbreaker.
Well, there were a couple heartbreakers there, right? There was some of your listeners are going to think I'm actually not a fan because I'm so cloudy and iffy on the facts.
Cloudy for me too.
But wasn't there an 18-inning game in one of those?
Probably, yeah.
Like,
well, that was a series as opposed to, one game elimination game.
No, but they ended up in a heartbreak elimination. This was Dusty Baker, right? They ended up in people were calling for his head, but there were no bats.
Yeah.
Like nobody was hitting. And I never understood that about baseball. I mean, there's a lot I don't understand about the fans and what they expect, but the manager can't make guys
hit the ball, right?
Hit.
But they can put them in the right position.
Absolutely. You got to go with a hot hand, but you need a hot hand.
And I was there for 2017 maybe, 2018 even, and the wild card against the Cubs.
Against the Dodgers. Oh, the Cubs.
When they were leading the Cubs. And it started falling apart late, and I was in the corner close to the bullpen, the Nats bullpen. And when Max Scherzer came out of that bullpen, 7th or 8th inning, whatever that was, that place was electric. And everybody knew Max was going to come in and shut it down, stop the bleeding, and take us to the next round. I believe that was game 5 of that series. And he came in and he didn't. And we couldn't believe it. It was, I think Matt Wieters had a terrible play. Jason Worth out in the outfield had a bad play.
There was a bad play at the plate. I remember that. Because I was overseas then too. I'd have to get up at I don't know, 3 o'clock in the morning
Right.
to start
Yeah.
watching.
So you're right. Hope. If you have hope, it can be dashed and it can be squashed
Yeah.
very unceremoniously, and it hurts. But all I can ever ask for is hope going into a season for any of the teams, and even the Wizards. I had hope at the beginning of the year when they traded for Westbrook, and I like Westbrook better than Wall, and I said we've got
Yeah.
something here. Well, I got hope. Well, I don't have any hope.
Yeah.
They're done. They've squashed that.
How'd you feel when they picked up Dwight Howard?
Oh no, I'm not a Dwight Howard guy. So no, I
Okay.
did not have any hope with that. I mean, he'd been on like 6 teams in the past 4 years or something like that.
See, I'm a cynic. If Westbrook's available, like the team letting him go, the Rockets, right? He came from the Rockets. They know something we don't, or they know something that the Wizards
Sure,
don't.
but it felt to me
So
that it was a move that was just good for both teams, both players, to send Wall, let him have a fresh start, and then Houston send Westbrook for him to have a fresh start. But right now, if you had to grade it, Houston got the better of that deal because Wall's playing great and Westbrook's just meh, okay.
how often do you see a Bailey Portis situation where it just works out for both
Yeah, not
organizations?
often, not often.
Yeah, I don't
Yeah,
think you do. Um, yeah, I'm trying to think of names that have come to town
be it trade.
where trade or picking up on free agency, just whatever. Like these hopeful names, right? Or at least there's a percentage of people who are hopeful. McNabb, I think, would be a
Yeah.
big one I could think
So
of.
they already have to be superstars, or can they be like we all know Max Scherzer? The signing of Max Scherzer is one of the best free agent signings in the history of sports. He's been everything that they could possibly
Yeah,
have wanted when they signed him. But he wasn't
I
necessarily
don't
a
think there's any question.
superstar at that time. He was very
Yeah,
good. He had won a Cy Young previously. So
right.
he was very good, but we didn't consider him a superstar like we do now.
Um, yeah, Scherzer would be the one I would. That's the poster child for this getting hopeful for something. Um, Adam Dunn. I mean, you got this masher who comes to town. He's hitting 40 some homers. I was all in on Soriano,
Mm,
who was an absolute killer. And these things sometimes they just don't work. And I think some things happen, like the Nats in the championship year, where you don't even know what's happening at the time, and you're just along for the
right.
ride, and you can't even point to the thing. Like, would this have happened if they didn't go all in and sign Worth for that huge contract to open the door to everybody else and say, hey guys, they're paying, they're willing to put up, you just look at these things and sometimes it just works out. And I don't know if hope comes into the equation at any point, except maybe in hindsight, or to inform the next time you're in that situation going like, hey, they've shown us they can do
Yeah.
this thing.
Well, that's. I like that we developed a theme for episode 3 here of Ref the District Hope, and that some of our teams have it at this point and some don't. But
Yeah.
Matt, thanks for coming on the show, being a guest host. Very much appreciate you taking the time to do so, and your insights were excellent. I appreciate you sharing them with us, and we look forward to having you again as a guest when coming up in the future.
It would be a pleasure. It's been great. Thank you very much, Stoner. I hope I only didn't detract from the show too much. I appreciate the opportunity. And I hope Nathan makes a quick and complete
Yes, me
recovery.
too. Thank you for that. And next week, as we said, Nathan will be back from his time away from the show. But don't forget, if you have any questions that you want to reach out to us about, our email is right below here, refthedistrict@gmail.com. Follow us on Twitter @refthedistrict. And for Matt and for Nathan, who wasn't able to be with us here today, thank you all for joining us, and we'll see you next time on Ref the District.